Attention passionate Detroit, Lions fans. Latest news, something big is happening in the NFC North and it could change the game. We're talking about a direct impact on Detroit Lions' path to another Super Bowl run, a power shift that could leave a division rival stumbling for years. We're bringing this to you firsthand. But before that, if you're a true Detroit Lions fan, subscribe to the channel to strengthen this passion even more. Show that you're also part of this family. Let's help each other reach 1,000 subscribers. Share with your FRINDS and Detroit Lions fans. Let's get to the news. The Detroit Lions, a team that has been building something special over the past few seasons, is now facing a period of critical decisions as they gear up for the 2025 NFL season. And trust me, folks, this offseason has been anything but quiet. With a roster that's arguably one of the deepest in the league, thanks in large part to GM Brad Holmes' outstanding drafting and talent acquisition strategy, the Lions are in a strong position. But as always, with depth comes tough choices. The roster is a delicate puzzle, and every summer, the team has to figure out who makes the cut and who doesn't. And this year, some of those decisions could be more brutal than ever, especially with the added complications of a tougher schedule, 2 new coordinators, and the looming pressure of expectations after a successful 2024 campaign. Detroit's roster is built to contend, but it's also a roster loaded with competition. The Lions have a core group of players who are almost guaranteed spots, names like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick, and Isaac T. Slaw. These guys have proven enough on paper and in practice to secure their positions. But beyond those, the fight for roster spots is intense, especially at the wide receiver position. Khalif Raymond, for example, is a versatile player who contributes on special teams, which makes him a likely candidate to stick around. But even he isn't completely safe. Ronnie Bell, a former 49ers receiver who the Lions added to the practice squad back in January, has been working hard all offseason. He's a player with potential, but with so many talented receivers vying for limited spots, Bell's future in Detroit is anything but guaranteed. You see, the Lions addressed the wide receiver position early in the 2025 NFL Draft. First, they made a bold move, trading up in the 3rd round to select Isaac T. Slaw, a controversial pick for many, considering the depth of the receiver class and the team's existing talent. Then, they added Dominic Lovett in the later rounds, which only complicates the roster decision process. The team now faces a critical question: which receivers will be able to stand out during training camp and secure their spot on the roster? The competition is fierce, and the Lions' coaching staff will have their eyes peeled for players who can step up and contribute immediately. This leads us to a very important point, and I urge you, pause here just for a second. If you want the YouTube algorithm to keep recommending the latest Detroit Lions news to you, it's super important that you leave a like on this video. Go ahead, it's quick and it makes a big difference. Thank you. Now let us continue with the big reveal. Now, when it comes to the receiver group, the Lions are in a very tight spot. The initial assumption is that guys like St. Brown, Williams, Patrick, and the draft picks are locks to make the roster. But the battle for the last few spots is going to be intense. Ronnie Bell, for example, who had a promising start with the 49ers and has been working tirelessly, might be on the bubble. The competition at wide receiver includes Tom Kennedy, Malik Taylor, Jackson Meeks, and Jacoby Keeney-James. Kennedy, in particular, has been a preseason favorite for Detroit in previous years, so his experience could give him an edge. Jackson Meeks also looks poised to make some noise during camp, given his raw athleticism and potential. But Bell's versatility and special teams ability might not be enough to save him if the coaching staff feels others are more dynamic or fit better into their game plan. Switching gears a little, let's talk about the linebacker room. This is one of the easiest positions to predict cuts, because the Lions already have 10 linebackers on the roster heading into training camp. That's a lot, especially in the modern NFL, where teams usually carry around 7 to 9 linebackers at most. The Lions, however, have enjoyed solid linebacker play over the past few seasons, with Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell, and Derek Barnes expected to be the starters in 2025. Behind them, Malcolm Rodriguez, Trevor Noask, and a few others will be competing for rotational roles. But one player in particular stands out as being at risk of not making the final cut: Deron Gilbert. Gilbert is currently at the bottom of the depth chart, and his path to earning a roster spot is incredibly difficult. He's facing stiff competition from players with more NFL experience like Grant Stewart, Ezekiel Turner, Zach Cunningham, and Anthony Pittman. These guys have been around the league longer, have more game tape, and bring a wealth of special teams experience. Gilbert's chances of sticking are slim, especially with the Lions trying to maximize roster spots for players who can contribute immediately or provide depth on both defense and special teams. And speaking of tough decisions, Detroit's interior defensive line is also going to see some shuffling. The Lions drafted Broderick Martin in the third round of the 2023 NFL Draft, hoping he would develop into a cornerstone of their defensive front. But folks, the reality is that Martin's rookie season was underwhelming, and his performance has raised questions about whether he was worth the high draft pick. His limited playtime, just 5 games over 2 seasons and minimal production, makes him a candidate for an early release or being waived before the start of the season. Martin's drawbacks are obvious. He has the size to play in the trenches, 6'4", around 330 pounds, but he lacks the agility and explosiveness you'd want in a modern-day interior lineman. His inability to shed blocks effectively, and the fact that he's only recorded a handful of tackles in his brief NFL career, don't paint a promising picture. The Lions already have a solid core of players on the interior, Alan McNeil and DJ Reader, for example, and they've also added depth with Roy Lopez and even drafted Tyleik Williams in the first round of this year's draft. That means Martin is fighting for a spot against a crowded and talented group, including Mekhi Wingo, a promising second-year player. The question is, will Martin survive training camp? It's possible he could hang on until then, or even get a shot at the practice squad if he impresses enough. But based on current evaluations, it's hard to see him sticking around long-term. It's increasingly evident that the Broderick Martin experiment in Detroit is nearing its end, at least for now. His future with the Lions looks bleak, and he might be one of the first casualties of this roster shakeup. Now, let's not forget the defensive tackle position. The Lions have invested heavily in that area, and their depth chart is stacked with talent. The addition of Roy Lopez, the drafting of Tyleik Williams, and the presence of veterans like McNeil and DJ Reader make it very unlikely that Martin will find a spot. Even if he makes it past training camp, the chances of him making the final roster are slim. The Lions are clearly prioritizing players who can contribute immediately and provide versatility up front. But the story doesn't end there. The Lions' defensive line, especially the interior, is one of the strongest units on the team. They've made it clear that they want to dominate the line of scrimmage this season, especially with a schedule that includes some of the league's top offenses. Their pass rush, anchored by players like Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston Jr., is expected to be ferocious. But the interior must hold up, and that's where young players like Mekhi Wingo and veterans like McNeil come into play. Let's also talk about the overall outlook for the Lions in 2025. Last season, they surprised many by making a deep playoff run, and the optimism around Detroit is at an all-time high. The team's offense is loaded, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and a solid running game led by David Montgomery. Jared Goff continues to prove that he's a top-tier quarterback when surrounded by talent and a good scheme. But the defense, especially the front seven, will be the key to whether Detroit can take the next step and contend for a Super Bowl. There's genuine excitement among Lions fans because the team has shown resilience and a willingness to adapt. Dan Campbell's leadership has instilled a culture of toughness and perseverance that's permeated through the roster. The draft additions, free agent signings, and strategic roster moves reflect a team that's trying to build a championship-caliber unit. But with that comes the harsh reality that some players will be shown the door, especially those who haven't met expectations or haven't fit into the evolving scheme. Looking ahead, training camp will be a pivotal moment for many of these players. It's where the real battles begin, players fighting for their NFL lives, coaches evaluating talent, and fans eagerly watching to see who will wear the Honolulu blue and silver come September. The Lions are in a fascinating position, poised to compete at a high level, but also having to make some tough decisions that could shake up the roster considerably. And for the fans, it's all about hope and anticipation. Everyone's talking about the possibility of back-to-back playoff appearances, maybe even a deep run that could end in a Super Bowl appearance. But to get there, Detroit will need to navigate the treacherous waters of roster cuts, injuries, and player performances during training camp and preseason. The competition is fierce, and every snap counts. The Lions are aware of this, and their coaching staff is prepared to make the tough calls needed to craft the best team possible. As we move forward, it's crucial to keep an eye on those players fighting for their careers, like Ronnie Bell, Deron Gilbert, and Broderick Martin, because their performances in these upcoming weeks could be the difference between making the team or heading elsewhere. The NFL is a league where opportunity is everything, and Detroit's roster decisions will be made with precision, aiming to maximize their chances of success in 2025. In conclusion, the Detroit Lions are entering a critical phase of their offseason. The decisions made now will shape their season and potentially their future. With a deep roster and a winning culture, they're in a good position, but the road to another Super Bowl isn't easy. Every player on the bubble will be fighting tooth and nail to earn their spot, and as fans, we need to be ready to support them all the way through. The next few weeks will be fascinating, full of surprises, and full of hope for Lions fans everywhere. So stay tuned because this story is far from over and the best is yet to come. And now, Detroit Lions fans, I want to hear from you. What's your take on this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion matters so much to us and to the Detroit Lions. And don't forget, I'll be back soon with more updates, so stay tuned for the latest Detroit Lions news.